After pulling a night shift and crawling onto the roof at 4 a.m. to fix a leak, I came home totally wiped out. My back was killing me. My hands were cut up and bleeding. I figured I'd grab a quick nap, just an hour to reset. Instead, I woke up to find my clothes shoved into trash bags, my wallet cleaned out, and a note stuck to the fridge that said, "You're dead weight. Get out." Alice was standing at the doorway with her arms crossed like she'd been waiting for this moment. Alex, my stepson, stood beside her with this smug grin and tossed me the keys to my own damn truck. "Go cry somewhere else," he said. And then, as if that wasn't enough, he locked the door behind me and said, "Don't come back." So I slept in my truck for 3 nights straight. 2 months later, I had 57 messages on my phone, all desperate, all from Alice. Let me back up for a second. I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I've been married to Alice. She's 36, for 7 years now. She has a son, John, who's 30, from her previous marriage. To be fair, Alex never liked me much. I didn't take it too personally. Teenagers can be tough, moody, distant, whatever. But this isn't just a story about rough family dynamics. This is about how, in a single day, I went from bending over backward for this family to being kicked out like I never mattered. And looking back, the red flags were everywhere. Like how Alex had a habit of accidentally breaking my stuff. Or how Alice would just sort of check out whenever I talked about my job. And the constant digs about how I didn't bring in enough money. Then there were the shopping bags that kept showing up. Fancy ones, even when our credit cards were maxed out again. But when you're in the thick of it, you find ways to justify things. You tell yourself it's just a phase, that things will turn around. You cling to the good moments, the laughs, the inside jokes. I worked nights, long shifts. Yeah, it's rough. And last Tuesday was especially brutal. I just finished a 12-hour stretch. It was raining hard when I got a text from Alice around 5:30 a.m. The roof was leaking in the living room. Perfect timing, right? I was already running on fumes, but I drove home in the storm, grabbed my toolbox from the garage, and climbed up onto the roof with nothing but a headlamp to guide me. Wind screaming, rain coming in sideways, the whole dramatic scene. Turned out a few shingles had blown loose. I patched them up as best I could in the rain. Took about an hour. By the time I came back down, my back felt like someone had taken a bat to it, and my hands were raw from scraping against the tiles. I remember thinking, as I stood there soaked and aching at 4 a.m., well, at least I fixed it. Maybe they'll be grateful. I walked in and saw Alice sitting in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone like nothing had happened. I told her the leak was taken care of for now, but we'd need a professional to check it out once the weather cleared up. She barely glanced up and mumbled something. Nice, right? Felt super appreciated. But whatever, I was too dead tired to start anything. I told her I needed to sleep for a bit before dealing with the rest of the mess. My plan was simple. Nap for an hour, then deal with the water damage. I didn't even bother changing. I just collapsed on the bed, still in my wet clothes. Next thing I knew, I was being shaken awake. I opened my eyes, and there was Alice standing over me, arms crossed, looking like she was ready for war. Alex leaned in the doorway, that same smug look on his face, like he was watching a show. At first, I thought I'd overslept. I checked my phone, 8:30 a.m. I'd only been out for 4 hours. That's when I noticed the trash bags. 3 of them, big and black, lined up by the bedroom door. I could see my clothes stuffed inside, poking out from the top. Before I could even get a word out, Alice told me flatly that I needed to leave. Just like that. Said she was done with me, done with my so-called excuses, and done carrying me. She called me dead weight and said she deserved better. I just sat there, trying to wrap my head around what was happening. Asked her if this was some kind of sick joke. It wasn't. Alex tossed my truck keys at me and told me to take my pity party somewhere else. I glanced over at my wallet on the nightstand. It was open and completely empty. The $200 I'd had in there? Gone. I won't lie, I lost it. I started yelling, demanding answers. What the hell was going on? Alice just kept repeating herself. Get out now. Then Alex stepped in, got right in my face, and started lecturing me about how his mom had wasted 7 years of her life on a loser like me. Which, let me just say, is rich coming from a kid who's never held down a job for more than 2 weeks and lives rent-free playing video games all day. The irony? Not lost on me. I tried to dial it back, to calm the situation down. Asked if we could just talk like adults. Alice pointed at the trash bags and said I had 5 minutes to leave or she'd call the cops. Then she walked off to the kitchen. I followed her in, needing a second to think. That's when I saw the note on the fridge written in her handwriting. "You're dead weight. Get out." That's when it hit me this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. This was planned. Premeditated. I picked up the bags and kept trying to make my case. Alex whipped out his phone and started filming me, saying he was recording proof in case I lost it. I wasn't doing anything but asking questions. Why? What did I do? Then they physically pushed me out. Out of the house? Our house? The one I'd been paying for. The last thing I saw before the door slammed in my face was Alex's smirk and Alice's cold eyes. Then I heard the deadbolt click. I stood there in the driveway for what felt like hours, trash bags at my feet, still wearing the same clothes I'd fixed the roof in. My hands were still scabbed over. My back still ached, and now I was homeless. Tried calling Alice, straight to voicemail, texted her. No response. I could see them peeking through the blinds, watching me. I finally loaded my bags into my truck and just drove. Parked at the 24-hour supermarket lot and tried to sleep in the cab. It was uncomfortable as hell, and I kept waking up thinking this was just some fucked up nightmare. It wasn't. For 3 nights, I lived in that truck, showered at the gym, brushed my teeth in public restrooms, showed up to work looking like absolute garbage. My coworker Wyatt eventually noticed something was wrong and practically forced it out of me. Offered me his couch until I could figure things out. First thing I did when I had access to a computer was check our joint accounts. Cleaned out. Every last penny. 7 years of marriage and she took everything we had saved, which wasn't much, but still. Called the bank. Nothing they could do since she was on the accounts too. Called the credit card companies. Found out she'd maxed out both their cards in the days before throwing me out. Meanwhile, my calls and texts went unanswered. I drove by the house once and saw Alex's friends' cars in the driveway. They were having a fucking party in my house while I was sleeping on Wyatt's couch. That's when something in me changed. The confusion and hurt started hardening into something else. Something cold and determined. I stopped calling. Stopped texting. Started making plans instead. Got a small apartment with Wyatt's help. Opened new bank accounts. Went to work. Kept my head down. Started documenting everything. It's been 1 month since she threw me out like trash. 1 month of rebuilding my life from literally nothing. 1 month of swallowing my pride and accepting help from people I barely knew. 1 month of rage building inside me, keeping me awake at night. But here's the thing these two don't know. I'm not the type to just roll over and take it. I've been working my ass off my entire life. I know how to endure. I know how to wait. And I know how to fight back. Next time I post, I'll tell you about what I discovered when I finally talked to a lawyer. Let's just say Alice and Alex have no idea what's coming their way. Because when you throw someone away like they're nothing, sometimes they come back as your worst nightmare. Update 1. Holy shit, y'all. Wasn't expecting my last post to blow up like that. The support from this sub has been unreal tbh. Reading your comments actually made me tear up a couple times. Yeah, I know. Not very manly. Whatever. When your whole life gets thrown in the trash, knowing random internet strangers have your back hits different. So it's been just over a month since Alice and Alex kicked me out of my own house. A lot has happened. Buckle up because the shit gets wild. First off, I'm settled in a tiny studio apartment now. It's basically a shoebox with a bathroom. But it's mine. Wyatt helped me find it. Dude's been a solid rock through all this. After crashing on his couch for 2 weeks, I needed my own space. Even if it meant living somewhere that makes a college dorm look luxurious. The walls are paper thin. The shower takes 5 minutes to get warm. The microwave and fridge can't run at the same time without tripping the breaker. But every night I sleep here is another night I'm rebuilding my life. 1 step at a time. Something weird happened about 2 weeks ago. Was grabbing coffee at the gas station before work and guess who I ran into? Alice's cousin Sabrina. This woman has never liked me, always gave me the cold shoulder at family gatherings. But there she was. Looking all uncomfortable. Avoiding eye contact while waiting for her order. I was about to just ignore her when she suddenly came over. Asked how I was doing in this weird guilty voice. I gave her some generic hanging in there response. That's when she dropped the bomb. Apparently, Alice had been planning to kick me out for months, had been talking about it at family gatherings, telling everyone I was lazy, useless, deadweight, said she was strategizing the best way to do it. Let that sink in. While I was working night shifts and fixing shit around the house, my wife was literally plotting to throw me out like garbage. The worst part? According to Sabrina, the roof leak that night wasn't even real. Alice had sprayed water up there with the garden hose to create a plausible emergency that would tire me out. She knew I'd climb up there in the storm to fix it. She wanted me exhausted and vulnerable. Who does that? Sabrina seemed genuinely disturbed by the whole thing. Said she'd been feeling guilty for weeks knowing what was coming and not warning me. Better late than never, I guess? She also mentioned Alice had been hiding money for months, skimming from our joint account into a secret one. That information was the kick in the pants I needed. The next day, I called a lawyer. Here's where things get interesting. The lawyer, this straight-shooting older guy named Bob, asked about the house. Whose name was on the deed? I realized I didn't actually know. The house had been my grandfather's. When he passed 5 years ago, I inherited it. Alice and I had already been married 2 years by then. I just assumed we'd put both our names on the paperwork during that emotional blur after his funeral. Bob did some digging. 3 days later, he calls me with news that knocked me sideways. The house is still 100% in my name only. Let me repeat that. My name only. Turns out we never updated the deed after my grandfather died. The lawyer handling his estate just transferred it directly to me. Alice and I had talked about adding her name someday but never actually did it. For 5 years, she's been living in my house, acting like it's hers. And here's the kicker. In our state, since we've been married under 10 years and the house was inherited, not purchased together, it's considered separate property, not marital property. Translation, it's legally mine. All mine. When Bob told me this, I just sat there in shock. Then something shifted inside me. That cold, determined feeling from before crystallized into something harder. Something with edges. I spent the next week documenting everything. Got copies of all bank statements showing the cleared-out accounts. Printed the credit card statements showing Alice's shopping sprees right before kicking me out. Documented all the texts and calls she ignored. Meanwhile, I focused on stabilizing my situation. Picked up extra shifts, started bringing my own lunch instead of buying it. Canceled all subscriptions. Every dollar saved was another brick in the foundation I was rebuilding. At night, I'd sometimes find myself opening social media even though I knew it would piss me off. Sure enough, there were Alice and Alex posting pics of the renovations they were doing to my house with my money. New TV mounted on the wall. Kitchen getting repainted. Alex's room getting some fancy gaming setup. All while I'm eating ramen in my shoebox apartment. But I didn't comment. Didn't react. Just took screenshots, adding them to my documentation file. Evidence of how they were spending the money they stole from me. Bob advised me to start separating our finances completely. I canceled the joint credit cards. Removed Alice as a beneficiary on my insurance. Changed all my passwords. Cut every financial tie I could find. That's when we discovered something that made my blood run cold. Alice had taken out a personal loan using the house as collateral. My house. Without my knowledge or consent. The loan was for $25,000. $25,000. Bob was shocked. That's straight up fraud. She forged my signature on the document. I never saw a penny of that money, but I'm supposedly on the hook for it. And what's she been doing with $25,000 of fraudulent loan money based on her social posts, remodeling my house and buying Alex a car? A car. With my stolen money and my forged signature. It's like watching someone rob your house on a live stream and not being able to do anything about it. Except now I can do something. Bob has been methodically building our case. Gathering evidence of the fraud. Preparing the legal document. We're not just going to get my house back, we're going to make sure there are consequences for what they did. The plan is set. The paperwork is ready. In 3 days, they're going to get the surprise of their lives. Yesterday I drove by the house. My house. For the first time in weeks. They've painted the front door a hideous purple color. There were unfamiliar cars in the driveway. Through the windows I could see people moving around. Laughing. Having a good time. Living in my house. Spending my money. Acting like they've gotten away with everything. They have no idea what's coming. And yeah, before the Reddit lawyers chime in, everything we're doing is 100% legal. I'm not breaking any laws here. Just reclaiming what's rightfully mine. Bob says the element of surprise is crucial. Alice thinks she's won. She thinks I'm broken. Living in my truck or on someone's couch. Licking my wounds. She has no clue. I've spent the last month building a case against her. No clue I know about the fraud. No clue the house is still in my name. The paperwork gets filed tomorrow. Then it's just a matter of waiting for the sheriff to serve the document. I've taken next Monday off work. That's when it's all going down. Bob will be with me. We've thought of everything. One thing I've learned from this whole nightmare: when someone shows you who they really are, believe them the first time. Alice and Alex showed me exactly who they are. Selfish, cruel, greedy. Now I'm about to show them exactly who I am. And I'm not the doormat they think I am. I'm the storm they never saw coming. Finally, update. So, Monday happened. And holy fucking shit, you guys. I'm sitting here in my house right now on my couch, drinking my beer, trying to process everything that went down in the last 48 hours. This is gonna be a long one, but I promise it's worth reading till the end. First, thank you all for the messages of support. Literally, thousands of you reached out, shared similar stories, offered advice. That shit kept me going through some dark nights. For real. Monday morning, 8:27 a.m. I'm parked down the street from my house with Bob, my lawyer, beside me in his car. My stomach's doing somersaults. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours the night before. Kept having these weird dreams where I'd show up and the house would be gone. Just a big empty lot. But there it was. My grandfather's house. My house. With that ugly purple door Alice painted. Alex's new car in the driveway. Bought with my fraudulently obtained money. 2 other cars I didn't recognize parked on the street. At 8:59, the sheriff's car pulls up. Right on time. I give him a minute to walk up to the door, then Bob and I follow. Heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stayed back a bit, not wanting Alice to slam the door before the sheriff could serve the papers. Through the glass panels beside the door, I could see movement inside. Then the door opened. Alex, standing there in basketball shorts and no shirt, looking confused as hell at the sheriff on our porch at 9 a.m. on a Monday. Behind him, I spot Alice rushing over, tying a robe around herself. I couldn't hear everything, but I saw the exact moment when the sheriff handed over the stack of documents. Saw Alex's face go from confused to shocked. Saw Alice grab the papers, I scanning frantically. Then she saw me standing behind the sheriff. Y'all. Her face. I wish I had a picture. That moment when she realized she wasn't in control anymore. When she realized she'd fucked with the wrong guy. That moment was worth every night I spent in my truck. Every ramen dinner in my shitty apartment. Every tear I'd swallowed. The sheriff explained that they had 48 hours to vacate the premises. That's when Alice lost her shit. Started screaming that it was her house. That I was harassing her. That she'd call the police. The sheriff, who was the police, just pointed to the legal documents and said everything was in order. Alex tried to get aggressive, stepping toward me with his chest puffed out. The sheriff shut that down real quick. Bob calmly walked them through the facts. The house was solely in my name. They had committed financial fraud by taking out loans against property they didn't own. They had emptied joint accounts and stolen cash from my wallet. Every accusation backed up with documentation. The look on their faces as he laid it all out. Priceless. Truly fucking priceless. Alice switched tactics, going from rage to tears in 2.5 seconds. Started sobbing about how I couldn't just throw them out. Where would they go? How could I do this after 7 years together? I just stood there silent, letting her performance play out. That's when Alex made his mistake. Called me a pathetic loser who would probably come crawling back after a week of living alone. Said his mom had only stayed with me out of pity. Bob had advised me to stay calm no matter what. But something in me snapped. I looked Alex dead in the eyes and told him he had exactly 48 hours to get his shit out of my house before I had everything they left behind hauled to the dump, including his precious gaming setup that my money had paid for. The sheriff warned them not to damage anything or remove fixtures from the house. All the renovations they'd done? Legally mine now. The fancy TV they'd mounted to the wall? Mine. The new appliances? Mine. We left them standing there, staring at the paperwork. Reality finally sinking in. I felt lighter than I had in months as I walked back to my car. But the real shit show was just beginning. About 3 hours later, my phone started blowing up. Alice calling. Texting. Then calling again. I ignored it all. Bob had told me not to engage directly. Everything needed to go through him now. By evening, I had 17 missed calls and 23 texts. Everything from threats to tearful pleas to get back together. Screenshots of all of them went straight to Bob. The next morning, Tuesday, I checked my phone and nearly dropped it. 47 messages overnight. Voicemails, texts, DMs on every social platform we'd ever shared. Emails. Even a fucking letter slipped under the door of my apartment. How she found my address I still don't know. The messages started with anger, then bargaining, then full-on panic as she realized I wasn't bluffing. The later ones were borderline incoherent, talking about how she'd change, how she'd made a terrible mistake, how Alex was sorry too. Doubt. The last one sent at 4:13 a.m. just said, "Please Randy, we have nowhere to go. No money, nothing. Please talk to me." I sent one reply at Bob's direction. "All communication must go through my attorney. His contact information is in the documents you received." Then I blocked her on everything. Wednesday morning. The 48-hour deadline. Bob and I meet the sheriff at the house again at 9 a.m. sharp. I half expected them to barricade themselves inside, but to my surprise there was a small U-Haul in the driveway. Alex's car was gone. The other cars too. Alice was standing on the porch, eyes red and puffy. Alex nowhere to be seen. She tried to approach me as I got out of my car, but the sheriff stepped between us. I'll never forget what she said as I walked past her to my house. Said I couldn't do this to her. Said I'd regret it. Said Alex was right about me all along. I just kept walking. Inside the place was a disaster. They'd clearly left in a hurry. Took what they could carry and left the rest. The renovations they'd been bragging about online? Half finished. Walls partially painted. Kitchen cabinets removed but not replaced. And out of spite they'd done some damage. Holes punched in walls. Scratches on the hardwood floors from dragging furniture. The bathroom sink cracked. But here's the thing. Honestly, I didn't even care at that point. The house was mine again. It was like the garbage had taken itself out. Bob, my lawyer, documented everything thoroughly in case we needed to press further charges down the line. Then he shook my hand and told me the worst was behind me. He'd take the reins from here on the fraud case. The bank had already launched an investigation into the forged loan documents. Alice was likely looking at some serious legal fallout. Once everyone left, I just sat there, on the floor, in the middle of my empty living room. It was the first time in 2 months that I'd been alone in my own home. And it didn't feel like some big triumphant moment, more like finally letting out a breath I'd been holding way too long. I called my buddy Wyatt. He showed up an hour later with a 6-pack and a couple of greasy pizzas. We sat cross-legged on the floor, eating, talking, figuring out what needed fixing first. The roof was the obvious starting point. Then came the rest, the damage Alex and Alice had left behind. Wyatt offered to help out over the weekend and said some of the other guys from work would come by too. Real friends. The kind who show up when life falls apart. Not the kind who bail the second you're inconvenient. That night, I crashed on a camping mattress in my own bedroom. And I swear, it was the best sleep I'd had in months. The next few days blurred together, cleaning, organizing, making long lists of everything that needed to be repaired. I was using up some saved vacation days, and every hour spent reclaiming my space felt like therapy. Then yesterday, something completely unexpected happened. Around 6 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Alice's sister, standing there, looking like she was about to bolt. She was fidgeting with her wedding ring, clearly nervous. I hadn't seen her since before Alice threw me out. She and her husband, Stetson, were always around at family stuff. Stetson, well, he's a piece of work. Loud, controlling. Always talked over her, made every conversation about him. Alla asked if she could come in, said she needed to talk. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let her in. She broke down crying almost immediately. She apologized for what Alice had done, said she tried to stop her, tried to talk her out of it. And then she hit me with the real shocker. Alice and Alex had been staying in her and Stetson's basement since the day they kicked me out. But things weren't going well. Apparently, Stetson was making everyone miserable, especially Alice. He was draining what little money she had left, dictating when she could leave the house, even what she could eat. The irony was impossible to miss. The woman who treated me like dirt was now being treated the same, maybe worse. But Alla wasn't there to plead Alice's case. She came for herself. She wanted out. Away from Stetson. She'd been thinking about leaving him for months, but never had the guts to do it. She said seeing me stand my ground gave her the courage to finally make a move. So we sat together for 3 hours, mapping it all out. I called a friend who works with a women's shelter, made a few phone calls, pulled a few strings. By 10 p.m. she had a safe place lined up and a solid plan to grab her things while Stetson was at work. This morning, I helped her move the essentials into a storage unit. She was in tears, saying she never thought I'd help her after everything Alice had done. I told her she wasn't Alice. She hadn't done a damn thing to me. Now, as I write this, it's evening. I'm sitting on my back porch with a beer in hand, watching the sunset. There's still a mountain of work ahead. The house is a mess, my bank account's still recovering, and the legal situation with Alice isn't fully over yet. But I'm free. And I'm a hell of a lot stronger than I was 2 months ago. Funny thing, Ala texted me about an hour ago. Turns out Alice and Alex just found out she left Stetson. Stetson flipped out and blamed them for her leaving. Kicked them both out. Now they're homeless. No money. No car. Alex's car got repossessed just yesterday. And apparently, they've run out of friends willing to help them out. Karma's a magnificent bitch. So that's where things stand. I'm rebuilding slowly but surely. And they're unraveling. Falling apart. Every day, I feel a little less bitter and a little more at peace. If you've made it this far, Reddit, thanks for being here. Your support meant more than I can say. And to the commenter who once asked if I'd ever take Alice back if she apologized and changed? LMFAO. Not even if she were the last woman alive. Some bridges don't just burn, they get nuked from orbit.